Welcome back everybody to a term of clay. I've got some tools on the table in front of me. I have a clay board that's been specially made. It has pieces of wood on each side of it so that when you are rolling clay flat you can get nice even sides, because that's one of the secrets of a good piece of clay work, is that the base and the sides are all even thickness. Now we won't be using a rolling pin this session, so we won't need to have the sides up. We'll turn it over and we'll use this side of the board. Also notice that the board is really clean, which means that I don't have old pieces of clay that are going to stick into my new fresh clay and cause problems with cracking. So we are using earthenware, and I will pack up some clay for every student to take home, and you will use your piece of clay for this week's activity, and I hope bring it back at the end of the week finished, and it can be stored in the art room and I'll be able to fire it after we get back to school. We're all here together and we have coloured it with some underglaze. Okay, so we're ready to start. If you're not allowed to work on the table, find yourself a chopping board or something that is easy to wash. It's only mud, it washes off very easily, and it's not dirty, it's clean mud. Clean mud. So find yourself something that you're allowed to work on, even if it's a piece of newspaper, that's fine. Set yourself up. You don't have tools at home, I understand that, but you can go and find a stick in the backyard that has a pointy end, or you can use a kitchen knife. If you're allowed to use a kitchen knife, that's a really good tool. Sometimes a spoon is helpful too. So that's enough. A stick, a knife, a board, and your clay that I sent home. I think that's all you need to get started. All right, so take the clay that I provided, break it in almost half, put the bigger piece aside, and make this piece that you've got left in front of you into a ball. Squeezing with your hands. Don't squeeze it for too long, you'll make the clay dry. And if you don't squeeze it long enough, you won't have a nice ball shape. So that's all we need to do. Once you've got your ball, place your clay in one hand, get your thumb ready, push your thumb into the clay in the center. Now you can feel already that it's fairly even thickness around the sides and at the bottom. You don't need your eyes for this activity, you need your sense of touch. So push your thumb against your fingers, turning the ball around, and it's very elastic. It expands as you push it. You can get two thumbs in. Use these fingers on the outside to support the walls, and the thumbs on the inside to press the clay and extend it. Now I'm turning it and I'm feeling that the sides are all even thickness, and the base too. It's very common for beginners to have a big fat heavy bottom and little thin bits at the top. So push your thumbs right to the bottom and feel that there are no heavy lumps anywhere. Right, we've made a pinch pot. So I'll move the pinch pot aside, and here's the clay that I have left over. I take a small piece and I'm going to roll it into a snake, a coil, a long skinny worm. Notice my fingers are spreading out. I'm starting in the middle, I'm starting from the center, I'm spreading my fingers out so that my coil is nice and even. If I just work in one spot, I'll push it right down skinny and then I'll have fat blobs in between. So I am working across getting it nice and even, and I stop when it's about the same thickness as the rim of my pinch pot. And I place the coil on the top of my pinch pot. Take it around and break it off at the join. Leave that aside. So it fits. I have an enormous amount of control over the shape of this pot by using coils. If I place the coil on the inside of the rim, I can make my pot come in at the top. If I place it on the outside, I will make my bowl flare out and become very wide at the top. Now, I want it closer to, well, not exactly on the top, a little bit more to the inside because when I join it, a bit like icing a cake really, smoothing the creases away, the crinkles. When I join my coil to the pinch pot, it actually gets a little bit wider because it's so stretchy and elastic, as I said before. It will push out, so I don't want it to be out so far it flops down. So I'm putting it more to the inside. I'm supporting it with my hand and I'm using my finger to ice the clay, ice the cake. Smooth out the crack in the join. So it's very strongly attached to the pinch pot, making it a little bit taller. So there we are. I've now got a coil joined to a pinch pot. If I wanted to, I could smooth this side as well. You might like the look of the coil showing, and that's okay. Or you might want it smooth, and if you want it smooth, you need to hold it very gently and go. Work all the way around, smoothing the coil so you can't see any join at all. There we go. Put it aside, make another coil. I might need that bit as a fill, so I'll keep that bit. Again, I'm making a coil, a long skinny worm, with my fingers running evenly across the clay. And when I see it's about the same thickness as the top of my pot, I stop. If I make it too thin, it will be a very skinny little edge and my pot will become very weak at the top. Again, I'm putting it a little bit to the inside, not to the outside, so I don't make it too wide at the top. Break off this piece and join it, holding it, supporting it, turning it. Try not to get all the joins in the same place every time because you'll create a weak spot. And again, I'm going to check the outside and make sure that it's beautifully smooth. I'm not adding water. I know some of you like to get some water and put it on to make the cracks go away and to make it smooth. But there's danger in making it too muddy. When you add water to the clay, you cause the outside to become slippery and wet, and it dries faster than the inside, and that leads to cracking in the walls of your pot. So we don't use water unless we really have to, and then you only use a tiny little bit. So here we are. I have a nice shaped pot now, and that stick that I asked you to get from outside is necessary because we're going to turn it into a little pot plant holder. So we're going to put a hole in the bottom So when you've got a plant growing in there, the water can escape. Now, make that hole bigger than you think you should, because clay shrinks as it dries. It shrinks 1/3 of itself. And that hole, if it's too small, when the clay shrinks, it will close up. Won't be big enough at all to let the water out. So make sure you've got a good sized hole. I think I would like to put 2 holes on the side so I can put string through and put a little plant in there and hang it up somewhere at my house. So I'm going to put my holes underneath my coils, because then I know they'll be stronger. One there and one on the opposite side. And I have made a little pot plant holder, and I could leave it at that. I could colour that when you come back to school. We'll use underglazes. We could put a picture on it, or we can paint a design on it, or we can colour it any way we like with pattern. So that would be enough. But you might like to add things to the outside of it to decorate it. So how do we do that? All right, you're going to need that stick that I asked you to get, some of your leftover clay. Maybe you would like to add, it is a flower pot, so maybe, cactus pot or something. So maybe you would like to make some flower shapes. It's a funny looking flower, but there we are. It's a flower that I've just created. And I might want to stick that onto the side of my pot for decoration. So, to attach a piece of clay to another piece of clay, you need to rough up the back of the thing that you're going to attach, rough up the spot that you're going to attach it to. So, it's sort of making it all prickly, isn't it? I've got that position there and that all roughed up, ready to go. I need a very small amount of water on my finger, and I rub it on there, and I rub it onto this area that I've prepared. Then I push quite hard to stick it. Oh, it looks more like a butterfly than a flower. That's nice. Accidents are so good with art. Accidents are usually the most exciting part of an artwork. So when you think you've made a mistake, think again. What could it be? Right, so now I have a butterfly on the side of my pot. I could add little flowers, little leaves, grasses, whatever I want, all the way around as decoration. I'll show you some pots that the students at school made yesterday. Let's have a look at what we made yesterday. First of all, this is made by a prep student, and you'll notice, well, I actually smoothed the inside of this for him because it was a little bit too rough. However, it doesn't matter if it's quite rough, because it's going to be a pot plant holder, and if it's got cracks in it and the water leaks out a little bit, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so you want the inside smooth enough to hold the dirt and the plant in, but you don't have to be so worried if it's not quite right. He's made a good size hole in the bottom. It is shrinking already. It's only yesterday this was made, and the clay is now what we call leather hard. Once the clay is leather hard and going through the drying process, you can't add other bits of clay to it. It looks like it works when you stick them together, but as soon as it finishes drying, the new piece you added drops off, because once the water evaporates, there's nothing left to keep it there. So make sure you finish adding all the bits that you want on your pot while it's wet. If you haven't finished your pot and you want to stop and do some more tomorrow, you need to put your clay into a plastic bag and make sure no air can get to it, and you keep it in a cold place, like in your carport or on your veranda or in your shed. In the lounge room beside the heater would be a really silly place to keep it because it will dry out. Even in a plastic bag, it's a silly place to keep it. So if you're going to take a few days to work on your pot and put a lot of work into the decoration, then keep it sealed in a plastic bag and store it in a cold place. Otherwise, make sure you finish all your additions in one sitting. So that's a prep. He's done a very good job. You can see he had made the coils and added them, showing a lot of cracks, but as I said before, that doesn't matter. This is made by a grade 3 student. Now, she could have worked a little bit harder getting it smooth on the inside, but it is a pot plant holder, so it doesn't matter. The edges are all the same thickness, which is fantastic. Lovely big hole in the bottom because it will shrink. And she has added hearts all the way around. I do hope she's added them strongly because as soon as the clay dries, they'll drop off if they're bumped and they won't stay there. So handle it with care. It's very fragile. This is a grade 6 student. Now he has made a beautifully fine, delicate pot here. He's not put a hole in the bottom. He doesn't want it to be for a plant. So it's going to be a little bowl. The sides are so fine, which is a very beautiful, delicate thing, but it means it's fragile. So if you bump those sides, they will crack off and spoil your work. Be very careful how you store it. The last one I'm going to show you is a grade 1 student, and she's done a magnificent job. She's put a little picture on hers. She's got a tree and some garden things, a little tiny bird sitting on the edge, and I don't know what that is, but it's very cute. Oh yes, it's a house. I can see it's got a door and windows and a roof. It's gorgeous. These things are pretty tricky to keep on with get right through the process without them breaking off. So you will need to store it carefully and pack it in some bubble wrap or something soft, even a towel, and in a box, and carry it back to school very carefully so that we can fire it. Otherwise it will not last, and it's a beautiful thing, beautiful piece of work. Most important last thing to remember is you need something pointy. A stick is pointy and that would do the trick, but a nail is even better. You must write your name and your number for your grade on the bottom, because when we put them in the kiln with 50 other pieces of clay, we never know whose is who. They change so dramatically in the kiln that you can't recognize them when you take them out. You don't even know which is your own piece of work. They shrink, they change, the chemistry changes, the look of the clay, and they become hard, functional bowls. So name and grade on the bottom, please, everybody. Then when you have completed your work, put them somewhere to dry. I put them under my couch at home. When I take your work home, I dry it in my lounge room under the couch where nobody will bump it. And then when it gets pretty dry, after about 3 days, I take it out of there and I put it on top of my Canara heater so that it becomes absolutely bone dry. Then it is brittle. It will break if you're not very gentle with it. So you've got to try to pick it up underneath, not bumping things, pat it in a box somehow and get it back to school ready for the next part of the process, which is putting on the glaze. Enjoy your activity and I look forward to seeing what you make.